Hey there, welcome back. Today we are reading another bunch of creepy stories from Reddit. So grab a blanket, turn the lights down low, and let's get into it. My neighbor is an old lady. She comes outside every once in a while to chat with passersby and garden. The first conversation she had with my dad, she complimented the painting he has hanging in his bedroom. No big deal. She probably saw us, moving it in, or glimpsed it at some point before we got curtains. But then she meets our dog and says, well, he's much scarier through the window, isn't he? Again, not a big deal, we know. She has a habit of pushing aside blinds to stare outside. She comments on things like this often, asking us why we didn't walk our dog that morning or when we got a new sofa, but she's just an old lady, right? She's probably bored and outside a lot. Then she meets me. She swears she's already met me, but I had never seen her before in my life. She asks me how I like my room and tells me about the girls who had it before me. Weird, but okay. She rubbed me the wrong way, but I don't really mind. She's fairly easy to avoid, or so I thought. As I was taking the dog outside, I happened to glance over and see her staring at me through the window. She lowers the blinds when she sees that. I saw her but is peeking through them watching me. Later I go to the kitchen and see her again watching me very intently through the window. Our blinds were slightly open to let light in. Then upstairs in my parents' room, there's a window in their bathroom. I see her again as I'm replacing the towels, watching. The more I looked for her, the more I saw she was watching basically all the time. Not only from her window. She sits in her car and watches us from the street. She sits on her porch and watches. She slowly walks down the street and watches us. Literally all hours of the day. And she does it to her other neighbors, and she does it to the people who had our house before us. Everyone knows to keep your blinds and curtains shut at all times, otherwise you can guarantee she watches you. It freaked me the hell out. My ex-husband kidnapped my kids. A church was helping him hide them from me. I was a Catholic, therefore an idol worshiper, and he was Baptist. He wasn't religious when we got married, but was in his past. I guess when he hits a life crisis. His answer is the nearest megachurch. He was in the army and told them I was killed in a car wreck and had to go get the kids. Then he went into hiding. I got a colonel up at 3 a.m. and he was back with the kids in 72 hours. Scariest weekend of my life. A few years ago I went to the kitchen around 2 a.m. to get a glass of water. I figured why put the lights on if I'm going to be done in 5 seconds, right? So, 10-year-old me was in complete darkness when I noticed someone staring through our window, with their hands pressed against the glass we had seen through curtains. I screamed at the top of my lungs and froze. Mom woke up and came running to the kitchen to me crying like a baby in my pajamas. He was already gone, but I told her what happened, so she went outside with a knife to look for him but never found him. And that's why we don't have to see through curtains anymore. I still have an irrational fear of the dark. I was on a backpacking trip on the Appalachian Trail, and my dad and I stopped at one of the many public cabins. We set our bags down and joined the campfire. It was just us and a middle-aged Asian couple. We begin talking and the sun sets, so we don't expect anyone else to come. Nevertheless, this huge guy with long silver hair sets his small pack down under the awning and joins us at the fire. He was no less than 6'8", extremely muscular, and had his hair tied back into a ponytail. Imagine a more muscular Geralt from The Witcher. We start talking and he seems very friendly. Then my dad asks the man, "So where are you from?" No response. My dad repeats the question, thinking the guy didn't hear him. No response. The Asian guy asks the question and suddenly the big guy explodes yelling, "I don't know, I don't fucking know." He then takes out a huge Bowie knife and a whetstone and starts sharpening it. All of us decided to pack our stuff and book it to the next cabin, which was about 7 miles away. It was a walk, but we eventually made it there, and there was a dirty hippie dude already there. He stunk like hell, but was harmless. We stop at the campfire and hang out for a bit, then I see a reflection out of the corner of my eye. I turn around and see the big silver-haired guy standing in the tree line spying on us. At that moment, I nearly shat my pants because there was no way all of us could take this guy on. He was built like a WWE wrestler, and we were all under Sarvtir. I let the other people know, and the Asian guy took out a revolver and told the man to go the fuck off. Big guy stands there for a moment and silently walks off into the woods without making any sound. After that incident, we agreed to have someone keep watch. Since the Asian guy had a gun, he volunteered while we slept. In the morning, I was so glad the big guy didn't come back because the Asian man fell asleep. That shit still gives me chills. A guy followed me home from the train station once. I think he still knows where I live. I got out of work and was waiting at the train station. I had my headphones in and was staring at the TV with the arrival departure times. This guy suddenly appeared out of nowhere, got really close to my face and asked me if I had a boyfriend. I said nothing and walked away quickly. He smelled homeless and had these big, crazy eyes that were darting around the room as he spoke. He also had an erection and had gotten so close that he'd spit on my cheek. There are weird people at train stations, whatever. I'll never see him again anyway. Move on. After I get off the train, I take 2 buses and walk a few blocks to get home. I was focused on the podcast that I was listening to and wasn't paying attention to my surroundings. All of the buses were also very crowded. When I reached my stop and started to walk home, I noticed that the creepy guy got off the bus behind me. There was nobody else around, so I ran home. When I got to my door and started to unlock it, he was standing at the end of my driveway. I was crying and fumbling with my keys. Then some of my neighbors pulled up in a truck and I screamed, "Hello, sir, help!" Then the creepy guy turned and walked away into the woods. I called the police, but they didn't show up for a while. They had me write a statement but seemed uninterested. My husband left work early and came home. We saw the creepy guy lingering around the neighborhood and walking past our house a few times in the following days. But he eventually stopped. Haven't seen him since. I've had a creepy coworker follow me all the way home. It freaked me the hell out. The worst part of it was that most people didn't believe me. This is a guy who would just stand in the doorway of my cubicle, enough that I got a rear view mirror for my computer monitor so I could see how long he stands there without saying anything. He did it a lot and would stand for minutes without saying a word. Just watch me. Sometimes he would ask me questions, like what kind and color of car I drive, and then would say, "I'm just asking because I thought I saw you the other day." In hindsight, the questions don't seem so innocuous. So when I looked in the side view mirror of my car when I was a block away from our apartments and saw his face, I was in shock. I couldn't believe he'd actually gone that far. I was on the phone with my husband and told him what I was seeing. I thought I must be going crazy, so I continued on to the apartments while watching him to see if he followed. Sure enough, he followed me down a street that was merely an entry point for a small neighborhood and my complex. It isn't used really for anything else, and I knew where he lived, so I knew he had no business being there. I turned into the complex, and there he was, right behind me. My building was located in a really squirrely part of the complex, way at the back but in the middle, so you had to drive a circuitous path to get there. And he was behind me the whole time, so I didn't go to my building. I passed the turn to go to it and booked it around to the complex exit and tore down the street into the neighborhood, turned around, parked at the end of the street, and watched the complex exit to see if he would come out. I mean, maybe he was visiting someone who just happened to live there. I kept telling myself that, but nope, there he was. Pulled right out of the complex and drove towards the direction of where he lived. I told my boss the next day, totally freaked out. She kind of believed me. It sounded absurd, but she knew I wouldn't make it up. But no one else in charge did. They handled it appropriately at my job and all, but they couldn't really do anything. They could only counsel him on the harassment of watching me work. It scared me, but I wanted him to know I knew and wasn't going to put up with it. So when he approached me and accused me of being rude to him because I had refused to speak, to him ever since that day I responded with, "I saw you." He said, "What do you mean?" And I repeated myself. He just turned and walked away. I've had other people stalk me and or my home, former homeowners with mental problems, but this one was just too close. It's terrifying to know that if we weren't as observant, we could have had a much different ending. I'm grateful you're safe. Myself and 6 friends, aged 18-28, mixed European group, were on a 5-day river canoe trip up a tributary of the Orinoco around Merida in Venezuela in 1998. Our guides were an older, 60s, rough-looking German guy and a slightly younger but shifty-looking Orinoco Basin Indian. One of our group knew fluent German, but for some unexplained reason, didn't share with the guide that she could speak it. Later told us she didn't want the creepy dude making comments to her that no one else could understand. We were 3 days in, roughing it in hammocks on the side of the river, not having seen a village for at least 8 hours. The guides kind of kept themselves to themselves after dinner, which was fine, but this evening they were a bit further away and we could tell they were having a pretty heated discussion in a mix of German and local dialect. Suddenly, the German girl in the group turns white and looks terrified, and it takes us a few minutes to calm her down. She explained she heard the German guy talk about making sure the others will be at the place and they will have the guns, and that the crocodiles will get rid of the guys and the girls will go with them to some village the day after next. We kind of freaked out, but decide that being alone with these two dudes days from anywhere in the middle of the fucking rainforest, we were pretty much trapped. We decided on a plan, which fortunately went our way. Early the next day, we decided that the next time we saw another canoe expedition pass us, we would essentially shout and scream at them that we were being kidnapped and needed help. Fortunately, a 4-canoe group came past and we enacted our plan. Our guides immediately just got the fuck out of there. Didn't even protest about our crazy accusations or anything, other than to pull a sawn-off 12 gauge from under a blanket and pointed at us to stop us chasing them, which kind of validated to us that they were planning to traffic us and they didn't hang around to get caught. We got taken to the nearest village a few hours down a branching tributary, where we explained the situation to the local police and some soldiers that were on exercise or something. Turns out there was a suspected serial killer operating out of the Maracaibo area targeting tourists going into the forest, active since 1996. I was never able to corroborate any of the info we were told by the police using any Western media source or internet searches. We still occasionally email each other about our close call, but it's been 20 years, and we've moved on with our lives. I've never told family or my wife, and I don't think anyone else ever told more than a handful of people. We found them at a bar at 2 a.m. Not our wisest decision. We don't even get into the luck of it. Such a crazy level of lucky breaks. The girl only stayed with us because her boyfriend decided to dump her on the trip. Otherwise, she'd have been going to St. Lucia with him instead. And had she picked a hammock on the other side of the fire, she wouldn't have heard anything. Or if she fell asleep, she normally would have fallen asleep right after dinner but sat up chatting with everyone instead. Crazy thinking about it. In high school, me and a buddy made the dumbass decision to smoke weed in a graveyard around 8 and 9 at night. Summertime, so it was just now getting dark. I smoked to the point of being totally out of it. We were just chilling next to a tree when I see a man walking down the graveyard. I got a little nervous immediately but blew it off. I then see the man pull out a handgun and aim towards something. He didn't notice us at this point and I couldn't see who or what he was aiming it at. I was so terrified I thought I was mildly hallucinating. I couldn't even move. My friend hit my side and said, "Dude, this guy has a fucking gun out. We gotta get the fuck out of here." We both slowly got up, but like the stoned idiots we were, we hit a rock trying to get up and the man finally noticed us. He was a good 200 feet away from us, but the second he saw it, he slowly moved towards us with the gun in his hand. We started running at this point. I looked behind my shoulder once and saw him start to run towards us as well. We booked it out of the graveyard and were finally back in my neighborhood. I was terrified for days after that. When I was 12, I saw 2 tourists struggling to communicate with the cashier at a bookstore in Indonesia. I'm bilingual, so I just hopped over and helped translate before going back to browsing my books. After paying, one of the guys came over to thank me. He wanted to take me out for dinner to repay me. Being 12, of course, I told him I can't have dinner without my parents' permission. He went, "I'm sure you can sneak out, right?" No. By now I noticed his friend came up behind me, so I'm kind of boxed between them in the middle of 2 bookshelves. My sister had already ducked under one and ran off, leaving me alone. They were really persistent and asked me if I could grab lunch or drinks instead. I'm 12. Finally, one of the sales girls noticed something was off and came to ask if anything's wrong. I got the fuck out of there. My sister and I went to another store, and suddenly, my sister started freaking out since they were right behind us. Okay, maybe it's a coincidence. We went to a lingerie store, they followed. Okay, we're definitely being followed. We ran to the store our mom was in, and the salespeople there called security. I thought they were slightly creepy at that time, but now that I'm older, holy shit, they were fucking creepy. Oh, and I'm Asian, so at 12 I looked 8-9. This is actually kind of embarrassing, but anyways. Last year I was watching my parents' house while they were out of the state. They live on a wooded plot of land and have been known to have trespassers on their property. I got home one night at about 11 p.m., and I'm standing in the foyer, and the way the foyer is, I can see into the kitchen, which has windows. The only light in the house is the moonlight coming in the windows. Against the light, I can see the silhouette of someone standing there. My heart immediately started slamming against my chest, and I asked, "Who's there?" No answer. I ask again, and as I'm asking, I'm moving my keys that I was holding into the spaces between my fingers so I had a weapon. Again, there was no answer. I start moving, and the figure starts moving too, exactly the same way I was. I put 2 and 2 together, and I flick on the lights, and I see a reflection of myself in the mirror. That's in the foyer. I ran on the track team in high school, and during my first 2 years, I rode the late after-school bus to get home. On Tuesday, Thursday, there were 2 buses that took students home, but on Mondays and Fridays, everyone had to ride one bus, and the bus was driven by this really creepy guy. He would look at girls through the rearview mirror and stare at them for lengthy periods of time while giving this really unsettling smile which made all of the girls uncomfortable. One day, this guy was the bus driver who took our team to a track meet at another school. The buses would normally stay parked in the parking lot for the duration of the meet. Well, I had a while until my next race, so I decided to go and watch. My teammates run, and I went to watch by the gate, which was near the track's entrance. It started to drizzle, so I went to stand under this pavilion to keep dry. And after a few minutes, I saw the bus driver there, and he came over to me and asked me if I wanted to get on the bus to keep out of the rain. At this point, I'm really nervous, but I say yes anyway because I'm afraid of what will happen if I say no. So the 2 of us start heading to the bus, and I'm freaking out when a few of my male teammates see that I'm about to get on the bus, and they decide that they want to get out of the rain too. They come over to the bus as I'm about to get on and ask if they can get on, but the bus driver shakes his head and says, "Not you guys, just her." Now I'm really scared, and I stutter out that I'm sorry, but I don't want to go on the bus anymore, and I take off to the bleachers where I stayed for the rest of the meet. Even though nothing happened, I still get sort of queasy thinking about what could have happened if those guys hadn't come and I had gone on the bus. And that's it for today. Which story creeped you out the most? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this and want more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.